What up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord, Dr. Professor, Dark Joker, here with another edition of Traditional Fans with Opinions, where I'll give my reviews for whoever I watched, read, or played today. And who are Traditional Fans with Opinions? That is myself, and that is you, the viewers. With all that being said, on with the reviews. Kurumizawa's Folly, Chapter 14. So in this chapter, Kurumizawa has to go out for a little bit. So he put some dinner in the fridge for Hada. He asked Hada if he could cook some rice on his own. Hada says yes. And so then you have Mitsuba, who's Mitsuko, who's like Kurumizawa's friend. So Kurumizawa, basically, so Mitsuko had put on some makeup, and they waved hi to each other. I guess they can't see each other in person, but they can like imagine like being in, being face to face, but they just basically wave, and then Kurumizawa walks away from the building, and he's like crying from it. Then Hada visits Yoshikawa at work, and they discuss the stuff. So Hada says that for Yoshikawa to not tell anyone about the whole deal with Kurumizawa, and yeah, and basically he says he found evidence that she was telling the truth, and that reason he wants it is basically like if he loses what he has there, he has nowhere else to go, and that Cyber Joe was like his salvation as a kid. Uh, and he says he doesn't tend to blame Furumizawa, but he's like and he says basically telling what's going on is how he's gonna be loyal, and it's also how he is also his revenge. So Yoshikawa says, obviously Hana has some circus going on that she may not understand, and but then that it's probably a bad idea for her to interfere with his life like that. And Hana confirms with Yoshikawa that she hadn't told anyone about what was going on, and like basically Yoshikawa says she was concerned about Hana's wishes, and also the fact she's assistant. She can't necessarily afford to level accusations against someone who draws a very popular manga. I mean, that would not go well. Basically, be Kurosawa's word against hers. And basically, as long as Hada's fine with it, it's not it's probably would be fine. Things won't be fine. And he says, but if Hada did say something, some people would assume he's trying to extort him, Kurosawa money, and that's why she was trying to find a way to help. That she's trying to worried about it. And then Yoshikawa then asks Kurumizawa that she has one thing to ask, which is if Cyberjoe really was Kurumizawa's like work. And and then Yoshikawa said when she visited the last time, she said that Kurumizawa can draw a Cyberjoe autograph, but apparently he like there was some like he like there was something weird about it. And she asked Hada if he's actually seen Kurumizawa draw Cyber Joe. And then, Hada asked if Yoshikawa thinks that he's not the first person that Kurumizawa has used as a ghostwriter. And but if Kurumizawa actually didn't draw Cyber Joe, then he wonders, who has he been drawing under? And then, yeah, so, and so, Hada pays for lunch, pays for lunch, and then, And Yoshikawa asks if he's really going back there, if he's gonna keep drawing for someone who he doesn't even know. And then Ha says that Kurumizawa will not accept the work of anyone other than him. And Yoshikawa says that if a normal reaction would have been that for Ha to say that he couldn't be a fraud, but that the way Ha is reacting means that he's considering the possibility that Kurumizawa may not have actually drawn Cyber Joe. And it seems that he's not upset about whether or not he's a fraud or not. It's more about someone else having been in a similar position as him. And then basically, yeah, and he's wondering if Kurumizawa isn't the one who drew Cyber Joe, who actually drew it and what happened to that. And I guess Yoshikawa had asked for the rest of the day off, and she tells Hada that if Hada wants some help from her, then he just needs to say the word. But if he doesn't, then she'll go straight home. So yeah, so something's weird. So it looks like there's another person who Kurumizawa ripped off. So we'll see how that goes. Without see like they're setting up you know basically a big conversation with against Kurumizawa. And then yeah, I thought like this was a pretty good chapter. Liked how they're setting up all this stuff. Like all of these like also Kurumizawa, like with Hada, like they say there's a big conversation about to happen. So yeah, I thought this was a really good chapter. Looking forward to the next one. Fire Force season 3 episode 19. So in this episode, so Giovanni, using used body, puts the key into the Amaterasu generator and starts the Great Cataclysm, which causes the world to start merging with Adela. Arthur uses his like laser sword in order to defeat Giovanni without killing you. And then to help Hamia, Charon tries to take a bunch of blasts in order so Hamia could do her stuff. Like basically you see a flashback to where Hamia can hear the thoughts of all humanity. Basically it really affects her mental state. Charon, being her guardian, try to comfort her. And basically if she like needed to hit something, she would be willing to like yeah, he would be willing to like take the hits for her. And then like so Hamia's ready to do like her thing. And then yeah, so basically yeah, so Charon dies and Hamia's not happy about that. But dude, it's like you see also going on like you see like also like things are looking very cartoonish due to like it's being turned into the soul looking like the Soul Eater world. And you see a little bit um and you see a little bit of like the live action type stuff from Hamia's perspective. And like yeah, so like you see like how reality looked different back then. Like it's saying up like what was a really eerie chapter in the manga. Like I'm like you see a real it is a really eerie. Like I mean, it's like it is a very eerie chapter. What happens? Like it is going to be yeah like basically if you've read the manga, the live action chapter, which is like chapter 255, which do not believe we've reached that yet, but it is gonna be an insane chapter. Like the live action stuff, which they were showing some but not all. Yeah, it's freaking. Now, one of the things explained is that so the Great Cataclysm, the flames come from like despair. So the only thing that can deal with it is hope, and that's why the White Cloud were concerned about Shinra being a hero. So yeah, so basically now you have the whole hope versus despair thing, and then like you'll see like a lot of stuff happen. So you have the hope versus despair thing. There's definitely some comedic stuff that's about to happen. But yeah, I thought it was a really good episode. Looking forward to the next one. How to Make a Killing. So this is a new movie that released. It's loosely inspired by the 1949 British film Kind Hearts and Coronets, which is loosely based off a novel Israel Rank, the autobiography of a criminal. So, and like basically the names are very different than the British movie and and Israel Rank. So like yeah. So in this, so main character is Beckett Redfellow. So he's like in on death row. He's talking, to a priest, last rites, all that stuff. The priest and his father more. So Beckett says it's a true story regarding why he's in prison is actually more impressive than what the official story is. So he explains his life. So basically, his mother like was the daughter of White Whitelaw Redfellow, basically a very rich man, like old money, basically. So Beckett's mother basically had a fling with some like violin player and conceived the kid out of marriage. Whitelaw basically told her abort the kid, or if you keep the kid, basically get out of the house. He told her to get out of the house, and basically she was basically disowned, like, and she didn't really gain money. So she raised Beckett like without a little money, and the father had died the day Beckett was born. So Beckett didn't have a father in his life. He had befriended Julia Steinway, who was like a rich girl, and basically they had like dated when they were young, when they were kids, and then he grew up. And like his mother died, Beckett ended up in the foster care system because the family wasn't willing to take him in, and he really saw Julia again, and Julia during this time marries Lyle, who I guess was like an old classmate of Beckett's. So yeah, so basically, and Beckett was told by his mother, that he has he can inherit, um, like he can inherit like the what? but he's so far down the line, he will a bunch of people have to die for him to get the money. And Beckett works at a clothing store, and then but then he comes across Julia, and he basically wants like some issues with the job, like with his job, like basically affect things. He decides to and by the recommendation of Julia, Beckett decides to kill the Red Fellows in order to make it to where he can get the money. Like basically just by being the only one left. So, he starts killing so the first one he kills is Noah Redfellow. So Noah's, Beckett's cousin. He's like a party boy, you know, has some issues with drugs. Beckett, sneaks into the party, ties like a rope of an anchor to Noah's leg while he's like passed out drunk or whatever. And basically throws the anchor into the water. It drags Noah under. So, and at the funeral, Beckett meets Warren, who's Noah's father, and Beckett's mother's Beckett's mother's brother were. So basically, they talk. Warren offers Beckett a job at like the as like in finance. So like and they bond over the course of everything. So and Beckett then befriends uh, the next one. Like after Noah's death, he then like it befriends Taylor. So Taylor's like an artist, definitely has some drug issues. You know, arranges to where death, accidental explosion, kills Taylor. At least makes it look like an accident. Now the FBI is interested in him with two suspicious deaths in the same family. He does have a case for, and he does get is in line, down there. But then Beckett, who Taylor's girlfriend Ruth had been cheating on him with, so basically Beckett and Ruth grow closer. They end up getting engaged eventually. Julia tries to seduce Beckett even though she's married, but partly to do with the fact that Julia's husband Lyle basically is a retard and lost all the money. And so Beckett kills his aunt Cassandra, who adopts a bunch of foreign kids, basically by like poisoning like some teeth thing, whatever. And then he kills MacArthur and like who's his uncle. And basically, like detectives are getting a little are suspicious. So basically, and then the only one left, and he's the only one that he hasn't. Now he also kills the pastor, like who's his cousin, Stephen J. Redfield. Now, do they guess how Stephen like to do is like like his drinks were like some shakes where basically it was like too much of an ingredient, a commonly used ingredient. Basically, is what killed him. So yeah, so basically five are dead. All that's left are Warren and Whitelaw. Now, Beckett at this point cannot bring himself to kill Warren. Like, and he's becoming a little more content, like happy with his life. But then Warren dies of natural causes, and it's implied that Warren knew that Beckett was the one who was killing the Red Fellows. Like the way things were, it seems like Warren knew, or at least suspected, and which may like that no, that Beckett's the only one who actually visited him. So Warren's next in line after Whitelaw would die. So Whitelaw invites Beckett. on the same day as Beckett's engagement party. So Beckett meets with Whitelaw, but there's an issue where Julia had blackmailed Beckett into giving her and her husband money. So we lose to a confrontation with Lyle, but so Beckett meets with Whitelaw. They discuss things like the family. Then Whitelaw attacks Beckett, locking the house, having the butler lock the house and all that. Basis way is like, whoever lives, gets to, you know, gets the money. And Beckett, in self-defense, kills Whitelaw. And now, then, with that, he's now the head of the house. So he he and Ruth move into the mansion, but then Beckett's arrested. But it's revealed it's not for any of the Redfield deaths. It's actually for Lyle's death. So Lyle's found dead, and due to the footage of Beckett storming into Lyle's office, he was delivering the blackmail money. He basically made him the prime suspect, and all the evidence pointed towards him. So he's put in prison, put on death row, and Julia visits, implies there's a suicide note, and that basically she gives it to the court, whatever, and Beckett's freed, and then so he gets away with Lyle. Now the rest he only confesses to the priest. He confesses all to the priest, so I don't know if there's a priest confessor privilege. I don't know. I think there is something like that. I don't know. I'm not Catholic, you know. I mean, but I am of the opinion that um basically it's not an attorney thing, so there's nothing legally binding about if a priest wants to tell the police what was confessed, if if it's a crime and stuff. Personally, I have no problem if a priest does that because, well, that's what like the Bible calls us to be good citizens. So if a priest is willing to cover up a crime, you know, that's obviously not being a good citizen. It's not an attorney-client privilege thing. Anyway, so yeah, so then Beckett is able to get out, and Ruth basically dumps him, and so Beckett gets in Julia's car, implied to where basically they're gonna go back to the house, and Julia basically now has the money due to I guess living with Beckett, and Beckett reflects on all this evil stuff he did in order to get all the money. Probably a little remorseful over what happened. So as far as the quality goes, I thought this was a good movie. It was a decent movie. Still crime thriller comedy. And it was Glenn Powell does very well. Like Glenn Powell, Ed Harris, um, Jessica Henwick, Margaret Qualley, um, Bill Camp. They all do very well. So I thought it was a decent movie. You know, basically it's just yeah, he was cut out of the inheritance, and then he just wanted to kill them all in order to get the money. Simple story. You know, that was a decent movie. I recommend watching it. Well, and that's it. Did y'all like the stuff I reviewed? And if you have your own opinions about all that, you can put all that in the comments. Thank you for watching, and like, subscribe, and all that. And look forward to the next video.